Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, people of all fandoms, welcome to the Ferret and Raccoon podcast, episode 159. I am the Angry Raccoon, your one and only host for this podcast, bringing you technically the last podcast of January 2021. As I know, by the time this podcast goes up, it's going to be February, and it's pretty shocking that we're already in February. This year seems to be flying by, and I'm not 100% sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but let's just hope that this year is a lot better than last. That's all I can really say. But yeah, I'm back. It's just going to be me this time because this podcast isn't really the biggest podcast in the world, as I'm sure you can tell by what is in the link and the download description bar and all that. I couldn't even remember what it was called there for a sec. And yeah, but we're going to be talking about these things kind of in depth for the most part, because I think they are pretty much worth going into. But before we get into all that, I guess I'll kind of give you guys like a life update on what's been happening. So the main important thing that has been happening for me over the last few weeks is the fact that I finally did go back to work / starting my new job. Obviously, with COVID-19 still being a thing in England and this country still somewhat being on a lockdown because they can't get their stuff together. Things have been all over the place, so it's been very hard to plan and get things done and even relax, not necessarily knowing if I'm going to be in work or whether I'm going to be doing other things such as the hours or what exactly is going on. But it's been interesting over the last couple of days. Been kind of tricky to actually relax, so that's why I haven't really done anything. I really wanted to play Scott Pilgrim versus the World, the game, but I just didn't have the time. And I mean, I wasn't even working that much of crazy hours for the most part. But I don't know. Hopefully the next few weeks will be better. I don't know what's going to happen, but I should be getting a holiday soon. I did unfortunately have to do the COVID-19 test because for my job, it's probably best that, I be doing it so that I'm safe, we're safe, and nothing bad is happening. So that wasn't fun, especially having to, swab your throat and your nose. It honestly made me gag and cry. So, yeah, I'm not really looking forward to the next couple of weeks of having to do that all the time. But other than that, things have been somewhat chill with me. And I guess we will get straight into things. And I actually had to add a few things last minute because they unfortunately did happen. So I guess the first thing I'll mention is the fact that the legendary interviewer and I guess showbiz person now, Larry King, unfortunately passed away. Which was really sad to hear. He's arguably a massive legend within, the television industry. He's interviewed, hundreds upon people, and he definitely is a very iconic man, and it is a massive shame to see him unfortunately go and pass away. Which is really unfortunate. Another one which is really unfortunate as well is the artist SOPHIE. Following an accident, she unfortunately passed away quite recently, literally I believe on Saturday the 30th of January, which was very heartbreaking for me to hear because I love her as a musician, kind of as almost, I don't know, I was about to say like style icon, but yeah, I just love everything about this lady. And it is a massive shame to see her because her music and her style and what she was about was definitely futuristic, definitely boundary pushing, and definitely was its own kind of thing. And that's, I think, why a lot of people loved her and looked up to her. And you can kind of see her influence in her sort of futuristic or experimental genre or music kind of influence of artists, more particularly people like Charlie XCX and some other like wannabe female artists. And it is a massive shame to have them pass away at age, I believe, like 34, which is really sad to hear. So lost two more iconic and amazing people this year. So not the best start to the year, unfortunately, but hopefully, fingers crossed, nothing else bad happens over the next coming months. But I guess while we're not necessarily talking about good or positive things, we'll kind of keep the sadness going with our first topic that happened over the last fortnight, and that is the fact that Vicarious Visions are going to be merging with Blizzard Entertainment. Now, for those of you who don't know who Vicarious Visions are, they are the people who more recently developed and made the Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1+2 remake, as well as the Crash Bandicoot Insane trilogy, as well as like tons of other ports and other games in their back catalogue. Next to Naughty Dog, they have probably one of the best or most experienced, I guess, processes, or it's kind of hard to explain really, because they never necessarily made a, let's say, Crash Bandicoot game, but they made ones on the GBA and some on the PS2 and that, so I guess you could say they're experienced or somewhat knowledgeable, despite the fact the people who are currently working at the studio certainly weren't the people who made the games back then. But it's sad to see this studio go, because as well as them having their interesting relationship between like Crash Bandicoot and other things, and obviously the weird thing, as I'm sure some of you probably know, that Vicarious Vision is owned by Activision, and Blizzard is also owned by Activision. So the fact that this other smaller studio is going to be essentially liquefied into Blizzard, a studio that people forget how awful they are, is really, it's really frustrating, because as they've said in regarding this story, the fact that they'll be in, I quote, fully dedicated to existing Blizzard games and interactives really sucks, because there was a lot of creativity and a lot of heart and a lot of passion into, let's say, the last two games they did, Tony Hawk's and Crash Bandicoot. And the fact that they're going to be essentially making Blizzard games, which, like, I'm sorry if this is really going to upset anyone, but I honestly think it's true in the grand scheme of things regarding the video game industry. But does anyone actually like any of Blizzard's games? Like, I really don't think so, because I would actually answer for most people, and that's no, because their games are either dead or they've messed them up in some way or form. And I haven't, well, not me, but I think in the same sense, Blizzard isn't exactly in a favourable light right now, especially given all the weird things surrounding them and the things they've done. I mean, just to mention a few, their questionable relationship with the Chinese government that keeps kind of being brought up, because, as I'm sure a lot of you know, they have some of the biggest esports games, and a lot of these esports games have massive Chinese following audiences, and obviously Blizzard/Activision are very, very aware that they have a massive Chinese or Asian demographic, and they would want to keep that as best as possible, because it's big money at the end of the day. These esports teams playing their games, hundreds of thousands of pounds are won during these competitions and tournaments, and it's just bizarre. I'm sure some of you know about the whole censorship and freedom of speech that they have going on, where you can't really mention anything, or, well, more accurately, I believe one streamer/esports player during a live stream, he did say "Free Hong Kong" during the whole Hong Kong protests against the Chinese government, to which he was, I believe, banned and stripped of his role. And Activision's more accurately, Blizzard's kind of reply or comment on that was, oh, he was breaking the rules, which is, very bizarre for a company that likes to appease a Chinese demographic. So there's all that. There's also the whole Diablo Immortal situation, where when they showed it off back in 2018, fans were understandably annoyed that the first Diablo game in 6 years, as in from 2018, that's when it's announced, it's obviously been 8 years now, was for mobiles only. Which, when people asked, I think there is a very famous line where one guy says, is this a out of season April Fool's joke? And, other questions of, is it coming to PC? Because Diablo has pretty much always been on PC and probably should remain on PC given the kind of game it is. I'm not a fan of those games, but even I would argue those games are most suited and better for the PC platform, given that you're going to be playing it for hours on end. And, it does lead to the very infamous line said by one of the creators or higher-ups at Blizzard, or at least the game, where he basically says, "Do you guys not have phones?" Which is an incredibly scummy and arrogant and just awful thing to say when a group of your most loyalist fans, the people who have flown out and travelled to BlizzCon to see you and support your franchise, and you're insulting them like that is just ridiculous. At that point, I was like, Blizzard, you are just dead to me. It's awful. And I mean, even that statement as well, oh, do you guys not have phones? I mean, it comes off as like, yeah, one of the most arrogant things I've heard. Like, not even EA would like be that just blatant. It's just awful. And I mean, yeah, people do have mobile phones, but you know what people don't always do on their mobile phones? Play video games. You do realize that mobile phones, guys, have limited battery life. You know, they don't have big screens, unlike other people's computers. Like, oh, the arrogance of, like, that line. It really does, like, piss me off when I think about that line, because that line is almost the epitome of, like, the massive disconnect between big corporation studios and the actual consumers, or just, like, a disconnect between actual games and, you know, just marketing for the most part. And their piss poor release of Warcraft 3 Reforged, which was an absolute mess, which is important because I'm going to get back to that. But essentially, Blizzard is on damage control. Like, why do you think they announced Overwatch 2 and Diablo 4 and have shown pretty much nothing regarding those things? Like, granted, there's a little bit of footage of Diablo 4, but it looks like Diablo, like nothing's changed. And there's like a cinematic trailer, which I'm sure they've been sitting on that for years. But they did that because they're trying to distract from their awful reputation. So, why exactly did they buy Vicarious Visions? And simply put, I think by acquiring Vicarious Visions, Blizzard hopes that they, as in Vicarious Visions, the 200-person studio, will be able to do the one thing they can't or refuse to do, and that's make a good game/remake. Because think about it. Blizzard has not been able to make a good game that has been received well for nearly a decade. Like, it's coming up to a decade. Like, next year will be a decade, because Diablo 3 was received extremely poorly. I know some people like Hearthstone, but it's not exactly the most popular or the most played games. It's not breaking records, and it's not being reported on the BBC News now, is it? It's honestly really pathetic when you think about it. They have to essentially liquefy and acquire a whole studio of creative and talented people just to get something made that's competent. And I know for a fact they're most likely going to get Vicarious Visions, or whatever they're going to be called, because I doubt they're going to keep the name. They're going to get them to do the Diablo 2 remake, which I think is rumored, not confirmed. But I'm pretty sure that's what they're going to do, because they're probably going, oh, you guys are really good at remaking games. Oh, that means you'll perfectly be able to remake Diablo 2, a game I'm sure you guys all know about. Because they'll rush that game out, because, like I said, Blizzard is on damage control. They need something favorable. So obviously they're remaking Diablo 2, everyone's favorite Diablo game. And I am really not looking forward to having to report on this podcast that Vicarious Visions has been officially liquefied and shut down in a couple of years because of how poorly received and how little Diablo 2 made. Like, Blizzard needs to understand that the gaming industry needs to move forward. I understand there's going to be trends that are going to come and go, and I understand that sometimes it's best to kind of do your own thing, stick to your niche, stick to your fans. But when you can't even appeal to your fans and you're doing other stupid things like censoring them and being disrespectful to them, you might as well just stop at the end of the day. So that's kind of like my two-piece on the whole Blizzard situation. I don't intend to ever play another game from them. I've never played a game. They don't have anything that interests me. And I know plenty of people who were loyal, let's say, fans of their games, who, after the whole, censorship thing and other matters, have kind of been like, nah, screw that. And there are plenty of videos you can find, which I would recommend looking up if you're actually interested and want to learn a bit more about the studio, on why they're such an awful studio and how they became such an awful studio. It's worth your time if you're interested in that kind of stuff, if you like to see train wrecks. But moving on and sticking with games, we have the Resident Evil Showcase for the 21st of January 2021. The hype is real with this, because one thing that was mentioned during this showcase, which was about an hour long, and I'm going to leave the full video in the download link and the description in case you want to watch the whole video and see everything, because I'm not talking about everything, because not everything interests me. And the hype is pretty real, because one thing I didn't realize was that this year marks the 25th anniversary of the Resident Evil series. Yes, the first game released back, I believe it was, I think maybe 96, or at some point, well, obviously 25 years ago, Raccoon, back on the PlayStation 1, which is really interesting. And obviously they're going to be celebrating it, so it definitely looks like it's going to be Resident Evil's year. It also looks like it's probably going to be Crash Bandicoot's year, because that series is celebrating its 25th anniversary. And one thing I forgot to mention as well is the fact that I wonder if we're going to be getting anything regarding Crash Bandicoot, because Vicarious Visions, they did the Insane Trilogy. Clearly they're not going to be doing anything else with Crash Bandicoot for the foreseeable future. That leaves just two other studios who might do something this year. A game is rumored. Also, there's the fact that Activision maybe, and I'm going to use the air quotes, maybe cancelled the Crash Bandicoot cartoon. That's not confirmed. It just seems like it's up in the air. Who knows? I'm not going to say it's fact, because I do not know. But if so, Activision, not off to a great start this year. I don't know what the hell they're doing. It kind of seems like they're trying to piss people off, honestly. But I digress. Let's hope that, Crash and Resident Evil actually has a good year. And I think Resident Evil will have a good year, given what I have seen. And I'm sure what everyone is talking about. But first, I want to talk about the trailer for Resident Evil Reverse. This is essentially going to be a co-op third-person shooter that is essentially in celebration of the Resident Evil series. So essentially you fighting against other memorable characters in familiar locations. And, it doesn't look like it's the greatest game. I mean, it is going to be releasing with Resident Evil 8 Village, which is cool, so, no sweat. But at the same time, it at least looks better than the Umbrella Corps, which was an awful game to celebrate, I believe, the 20th anniversary or 15th, I can't quite remember. And yeah, nobody asked for this game. I'll be blunt, okay? No one asked for this. But to be fair, I'm kind of liking the cel-shaded look of these familiar settings. I think it does kind of give the game a familiar look. And it does give it an arcade feel as well. It does look like they're not trying to be super serious. Obviously, you've got characters like, Nemesis and Jack Baker, running around in the same halls, and other memorable heroes and villains. So obviously it is very silly. And I think, and I hope Capcom kind of does push the whole silly arcade aspect of it. I want to see floating items, somewhat like Call of Duty Zombies and stuff like that, crazy weapons. And I just want it to be absolute chaos, very much like how Jack's 55th birthday from Resident Evil 7 was, where it was just really silly and just a great crazy tonal shift. I want something like that. And hopefully Capcom does support it, and it isn't just a one and done, throw in the trash kind of thing. But I don't know, I'm going to try and be hopeful. Hopefully there's lots of references to the Resident Evil history. I'd love to see some obscure characters that you can play as. I'd love it to play a little bit more like the Mercenaries mode, which has kind of been missing for a while. And maybe if they even brought back to life some cut ideas and concepts, I think that'd be really cool. You kind of maybe see one of those where I think there's a shot where I think someone kills one of the characters, I think it's Leon, and then he kind of mutates into Nemesis. And if I remember correctly, one of the cut ideas for the Resident Evil 2 reimagining was that you were going to see a person literally turn from zombie to liquor. So maybe that's kind of like them actually putting that concept and that idea to use. So I'm pretty interested in this game. I will most likely play it and give it a go, but we'll see what happens. But next we got the big one, arguably one of, if not the biggest game to release in 2021, and that is, of course, Resident Evil 8 Village. I am really excited for this game because I really liked Resident Evil 7. I've liked all the Resident Evil newer games up until this point, so I'm really looking forward to this. And watching this trailer, I'm excited, and I'm a lot more interested in terms of what the hell was actually going on. It definitely wet my whistle in some terms because I'm really intrigued. Now, I'm not going to go on some whole like theories and start watching videos and speculating and all that kind of stuff. I'm just going to wait because we got until May, and that's not too long. And it also comes out on PS4. And because I don't have a PS5 and kind of can't really buy a PS5, I'm going to get it on PS4. Because, hey, I want to play and it's going to look good regardless. Or it's going to look as good as Resident Evil 7, which is still one of the prettiest looking games, period, on PS4. Simply put, because the RE engine is amazing. Oh dear. Excuse me, my computer was going to sleep and it makes me really paranoid because sometimes it locks and I don't know if it's recording. So sorry for the weird audio there for a sec. But hey, I would rather 1 second of the podcast sound weird than not have the tail end of it. But yes, compared to Resident Evil 7, it's more grand in a sense, and that's definitely because of like the castle setting, which they showed off more this time around. And I would honestly say that's probably my favorite aspect of this game so far, really. The environment and the castle, it looks so welcoming, it looks so grand, it looks so epic in some sense. It also looks creepy. Like if you actually look at the gameplay, you'll see that they very rarely any music is ever played. I hope that that's something that happens in the game where it's just silence, because one of the best aspects of Resident Evil 7 was it was just silent. There was no real soundtrack except for when scary things, were happening. And I love the idea of you just hearing things, footsteps in the background, all that kind of stuff. It's amazing. It's something that the games have done very well, is setting the tone in the atmosphere. And it is interesting. I'm also pretty interested in like the threats, so to speak. Some of the enemies are like massive. Like you see like one dude, I think people call them werewolves, but I really don't think they are. I think they're more third mutated people to some extent. There's one huge giant thing with a massive hammer. I know a lot of people really hyping over Lady Dimitrescu. I believe that's how you say her name. The spelling of her name is Dimitrescu. She is the essentially, as people dubbed her, the big vampire lady who is in the trailer. And people are lusting over her because they have lost control of their lives and their life lacks excitement. I think she has such a cool design. Like this ladylike giant with class. Like it's such an interesting take on a villain. Like very aristocratic, very somewhat smug. Like she's very poised. For someone who's clearly mutated or a vampire or a zombie, there is a lot of humility to her, which I think is great. And that's probably the real reason why a lot of people are latching onto this character. And also, it's just a unique character. Like, how many games do you know of where one of the main antagonists is a giant lady who wears like a, sophisticated, hat and dress? Can't think of too many. And I am interested to see what the hell is up with her. Like, how far is she mutated? Is she even mutated? Because she might just look like that. I don't know. I have a feeling that there may be people who aren't possessed or mutated to some extent. And it is interesting. I do like her design. I did note as well a very interesting detail if you actually look at her character. Yeah, she seems like she's about 7 foot tall, but at the same time, her arms and her hands are really big. Like, they're like not correct with an actual human. Like her body and her head are correct, but her hands, there's something going on with her hand that's a bit weird. But there's other characters I really like the Duke, who is essentially the merchant. He has such an interesting personality. He's like this weird, once again, aristocratic, upper class man. He's like very large. Like he's almost comedically fat, because he doesn't have a fat head. It's just like he's got this almost disgusting, like bulging, like stomach, and it is an interesting look. Once again, don't even know if this man is even like mutated. He could just look like that. But just seeing him, I was like, yeah, that's definitely a character. That definitely adds a lot of life to the world. And I guess the last one is like that man in the glasses. We still don't know who the hell that is. I'm guessing it's I I think in the trailer she mentions Lady Dimitrescu does mention her brother. Maybe that's the brother. I don't know. But yeah, he just appears and there's things just floating like he's got magic powers, and I'm just like, how the hell is this going to tie into everything? Like, you know, is he mutated? Is he just like that? Are we just going to go off the walls and the end of the game is just superhero battle? I don't know. It is interesting. It wouldn't be the first time in the Resident Evil series, but I am really interested. I mean, the gameplay itself looks solid. I'm liking the fact that you can shove back enemies after you shoot them or after they grab you. I'm kind of hoping there's more like melee combat, melee strike. So, I don't know, maybe there's like a, you know, crawl up behind the enemy, snap their head or something. That would add a nice bit of variety, because at this point, I'm pretty sure Ethan Winters knows what to expect, and he's pretty much trained for this kind of stuff, so there's no reason why he shouldn't be fighting back more in this case. And besides, the developers know, got to expand. Also, more guns are welcome. Hopefully we get some more variety, because I remember in Resident Evil 7 there wasn't that many guns, which was fine. Because I know you had like the pistol, magnum, shotguns, grenade launcher, and a few other things I won't spoil. Just seeing a sniper rifle was actually quite refreshing. That does seem like it's gonna change up the gameplay or some effects. The idea that you can snipe enemies from afar in a massive room or a castle is pretty interesting. I like that. The one thing I am also very interested in is the fact that this game, or they are clearly taking inspiration from Resident Evil 4. And like the attaché case. The attaché case is back and it's going to be an inventory system, which is a nice reference and a callback. At the same time, it also makes me wonder how much of this game, being Resident Evil 8, is going to affect the development and the creative process of Resident Evil 4's remake. Now, the Resident Evil 4 remake is still kind of not confirmed, and obviously it's a hot button issue because, for a lot of people, they're going to be remaking one of the most beloved games ever made, to some extent. Whether you like it or not, that game has relevancy and it's beloved by many. And I do wonder if this game is a massive success and people really, 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 really love this game, will development shift and change to be more like Resident Evil 8 when they do the remake? Or will they decide to go in a completely different direction from what happens in 8? Because here's the thing, Resident Evil 4, that's free money for them. Like, this game could flop, it's still going to make money. It's still going to be a hot talking point. The original game will still sell. It's just one of those games. But I am very interested to see what's going to happen with the Resident Evil franchise after this, because it is in a very strong position. In my opinion, Resident Evil is probably one of the only franchises actually keeping survival horror alive. All the people who made Layers of Fear and Outlast, that is not survival horror in my opinion. That is just the same boring stuff they've been doing since 2015. Resident Evil 7 and Resident Evil 8 are taking risks. They're pushing the genre in different directions, and more people need to be like them, simply put. And hopefully more original Resident Evil games. Like, I want to see a spin-off that does something completely different, maybe even still in a first-person perspective. I don't know. But I'm really, 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 really hyped for this game, if you cannot tell. And yeah, I just can't wait. I am going to try and get the weekend off to play it. But moving on, and to films, the first of two trailers we have to talk about is going to be for Godzilla vs. Kong. No idea why they can't call him King Kong. I just think that's a bit stupid, honestly. But yeah, this trailer came out of nowhere. Sorry, excuse me, I must apologize. The reason my throat sounds is like this is because I have done the the COVID-19 test, and yeah, if you've done it, you know how uncomfortable it is. Yeah, this trailer looks like trash. Like, this looks like hot garbage. The film looks like trash, and the trailer looks like trash. And why are people hyping about this film? Like, it's big. It's a big budget rubbish blockbuster. Like, are people that desperate for and starved for films that they'll rave about this crap? Like, this is nothing special, guys. Come on. Now, I understand it's not everyone. Not everyone is interested in it or has said that it's good. But this just looks straight up just shit. Like, come on, people. There are much better films of this kind of budget and of this popularity that are going to be better and, deserve your time. Like, they're trying way too hard to make Godzilla the main, bad guy, and King Kong the super powerful good guy. If anything, these two should be equals. I mean, granted, they're not. One is clearly stronger than the other. And it almost feels like the American filmmakers have an agenda against Japan, which is kind of not the kind of thing you want to be promoting in your film, especially given that Japan kind of owns the license to one of the characters in your film and could easily take it away. Which is fine. If they want to be fuckwards, they can. And I gotta just talk about this one line in the film, which honestly made me cringe and just laugh. Where I think one of the characters, whoever, I'm pretty sure the line was re-recorded forever, said, "Godzilla is hurting people and we don't know why." Godzilla is hurting people and we don't know why. Now, if you heard this line and didn't think it sounded bad or hilarious or stupid, there might be something wrong with you, or you're gonna love this film. Simply put. This is one of the worst lines in a film I've heard in a while. Like, my god, does this just confirm that no love, no effort, no attention, and no skill went into the writing or making of this film? How can you have such an idiotic line and follow up with scenes of the American army shooting at Godzilla? Like, what do you mean you don't know why he's attacking people? You are attacking him just because. Yeah? That is like attacking a cat and wondering why it bites you. Like, are these people actually stupid? And it kind of gets worse when you really think about this trailer, because unlike some people who just want to hype about it and they've probably been paid off by Warner Brothers, just to rave about it, why do they look so small, both Kong and Godzilla? Like, I would have thought they would be a bit bigger than that. I mean, they're meant to be monsters. Their proportions, are way off. Like, how big is that ship that's carrying King Kong? Like, seriously. So, are you trying to tell me they have a ship that can hold King Kong's weight? Like, was it either commissioned, or is this just a ship that exists in our world that can take the weight of King Kong? Which doesn't make much sense. But here's the thing. You have a ship that can hold him, but you cannot predict the location or the movements of Godzilla? How does that work? Like, I'm sorry, I'm not the only person who thinks that's a bit stupid. Like, how do you not know a massive giant obstacle is coming towards you to attack you? Like, come on, fucking amateur hour here, guys. Like, jeez, man. It's so stupid. And I mean, there's a lot of things that I do not like about this film, because I like the original Godzilla films, and this is not a real Godzilla film. I'm going to get into that in a minute. But although the CGI looks really cartoony, and it's just poor compared to, like, the practical effects of the original and real Godzilla films, like, they're real. That's, like, practical effects, that's costumes, it looks real, it has a weight to it. Okay? You may look at it and go, oh, it's corny or goofy, but here's the thing, someone actually made that. Someone put time and effort into that. Yes, animators and people on computers animated that, but it does kind of feel soulless in comparison. Yes, the work that you can do in CGI looks great, but I would argue here it does not look great. Honestly, it really doesn't. I mean, it just looks fake. All of it looks fake. I cannot get invested into this because it looks like it comes out of a freaking video game from PS3. I mean, even the backgrounds in the cities don't look believable. Like, that is not a real place. When they show that Neo City, that is not a real place. That is not believable. The lighting looks off. It just looks awful. It looks like someone is poorly aping Pacific Rim, which I would argue has better special effects than this. And it looks bad. Like, it really looks bad. And I could look past that if there was actually good content here, but there isn't. But I will be fair. There was one scene that I did like, the scene of Godzilla crawling out of the sea. That was cool. That was the best part of the film, and that will be the best part of the film, because it's, given how poorly written this film is and how generic it is, it's very obvious that Godzilla and King Kong will team up in the end to beat the bad guy. Like, they're gonna have a little scuffle, and then obviously they're gonna, because it's an American film, they're gonna, oh, King Kong's beating Godzilla, yeah, America's the best, and all that stupid propaganda garbage that they usually love to put in their films with monsters. And the bad guy's gonna be some stupid CGI monster. You even kind of see in the trailer they already ruined the surprise. If anything, King Kong will probably die sacrificing himself or something like that. Something stupid, because, like I said, I'm pretty sure the Toho license is going to be running out soon. So I don't think they have time to make another film. So this is meant to be their magnum opus. But yeah, and I know that they're going to do this. Do you know why I know this? Because that would be awesome, says the studio, being Warner Brothers, who brought you Batman vs Superman. Yeah, let that sink in. This is the same studio that decided on making Batman vs Superman. So yeah, regardless of how this film ends, at the end of the day, this is not a real Godzilla film. It's an American cash grab. At the end of the day, it looks like trash, and I don't care for it. I really don't care for it. Because at the end of the day, this film's going to release in cinemas, everyone's going to argue about it, everyone's going to say it's bad, they're going to forget about it, but even still, in 3 years' time, people are still going to be going to film college, people are still going to be making videos on the original film Godzilla, and they're still going to be analysing that and talking about that film, and all the other subsequent films that followed it made by Toho, even films like Shin Godzilla, which are fantastic films that actually take and do something new with the Godzilla idea. Yeah, this is forgettable. The next time anyone will be talking about this film will most likely be at the end of the year podcast, when it is most likely on one of our one of our worst films of 2021, because that's what it looks like. One of the worst films of this year. And let's actually talk about something that let's actually talk about a good film now. Raya and the Last Dragon. This is Disney's next big film. They originally dropped a teaser trailer for it, and I just didn't watch it. So now here's the official trailer, and there's a lot to talk about and a lot to discuss with this film. I don't know if it's because the animation is trying something new, or this is possibly a budget film, or the fact that I'm not sure if I'm not used to seeing their trademark look or style. Excuse me, but something is definitely off with this film, and I'm really not quite sure what it is. And I imagine a lot of people have the same feeling, because this trailer is getting a lot of mixed receptions. I haven't seen the mixed receptions, but I've just seen people kind of saying that it doesn't look great, which I think is kind of the main consensus. There's something off about the look of it. And the only thing I can think of is that, yeah, something is off with the animation, and I think there's almost like a conflicting direction, because if you look closely at the trailer, the animation scenes are animated differently to the slightly more still talking scenes. So I'm not really sure what's going on there. Maybe it's a budgetary thing, maybe two people had different visions. I really don't know. Also, the voice acting I don't think is very strong, honestly. Usually that's something that is always consistent with Disney animated films, but here I just don't. It's just not believable for me, honestly. I just don't think the characters fit the designs. Like, I don't think that anyone is like foaming in or doing an awful performance. Not necessarily, and I'm not saying it's bad. It just doesn't seem to work, like characters' tones, voices, like there's voices coming out of mouths that I just wouldn't put together. I don't know if this was like a last minute kind of casting thing, but the only exception really is Awkwafina. I believe I said her name correct, spelled Awkafina. I believe that's how you say her name. As the Winter Dragon, I think that's some great casting, because she honestly nails her character. She's a magical creature, being a winter dragon, and she sounds distinct from the rest of the world. Like, she's strangely soft-spoken, yet excitable, and that's a pretty unique personality and makes sense in the context of the film. She's magical, she's not of this world, she would be different, she would sound different. So they clearly got that aspect of it. And her shy yet energetic like personality or character, it's a great tonal contrast as well from this kind of dire situation that our characters find ourselves in. It's actually quite nice. um I guess to somewhat be positive about the film, because to be honest, I am interested in it. It is interesting to see Disney do something that's a little bit more actiony, Saturday morning cartoon. Maybe they're trying to go for a sort of boys kind of superhero actiony thing, somewhat like Big Hero 6, but obviously with a slightly more female-led cast. They want to appeal more to more girls, have a badass female character. I think that's great. It does feel like Disney's trying to do something a little bit different here. Their last few films have kind of felt the same to some extent. As much as I know people love Soul and Inside Out, you got to be honest, they're kind of the same film at the end of the day. I do think that's cool and all. I do think the Asian American cast, I think, is pretty good. It does. Hopefully it's not Disney trying to be passive progressive again like they always do. Given the context and the theming and the ideas behind it, it does feel like natural and appropriate to have a cast like this. Whether that's actually going to end up affecting the story and world is another thing. The cinematography as well, I think, is nice. There were some really nice moments of like actual like cinematic like lighting and other kind of framing, which was great. The animation at points does look nice, except for when they're kind of standing still. It doesn't look the best, but some of those action scenes, some of the fighting scenes, does look like it does have a nice energy and flow to it. The dragon, the winter dragon, she does actually animate quite nicely as well. Like her transformation from dragon to human was actually quite nice and quite funny. So there's a lot here that's pretty good, and I kind of hope that this film does end up being a good film. It's just there's something off about this film, and I really don't know what is going on with it. Yeah, it's something just really strange about it. But here's hoping that it actually is good. But I do feel like this film is already kind of being forgotten about, and it doesn't help that, literally just a couple of weeks ago, me and Owl talked about some of the things that Disney Plus have on their network, and there's a ton. There's like about 50 to 80 things they've announced, and hopefully this brand new film that comes up very soon doesn't just get buried like any new show or film that gets released on Netflix gets buried the moment it comes out. So that is a real risk with this film, and I hope that it does do well or is at least good. I'm sure it will definitely be better than the Mulan remake, which people cannot stop telling me how bad it is, and I have no interest in watching it. So yeah, but that's pretty much going to be the podcast. So like I said, not a lot of things that I wanted to talk about, but I talked about them quite heavily. I tried a different, I guess, approach. But yeah, that's pretty much going to bring us to the end of the podcast, but we got the video of the episode to talk about, of course. And this video of the episode is mainly because the next podcast doesn't go up until the 15th of February, so we'll be missing Valentine's Day, and I guess February has a lot of special days. Obviously Shove Tuesday, Pancake Day, I think it's like St. Andrew's or St. Patrick's Day, Valentine's Day, of course, one of the most depressing times of the year for a lot of people. I've never been a fan of Valentine's Day. I don't believe in it. But this video of the episode is kind of got a bit of a love aspect to it. Now, I've got to go check my laptop again because it's gone to sleep again. And yeah, so the video of the episode, I think, is kind of going to be something in the vein of love. And that is going to be Vladimir Cauchemar. And I really struggle pronouncing her name. But it's Vladimir Cauchemar, and another female artist. She's a Ukrainian rapper, singer, and yeah, I love this song. It's called Dancer, and I'm definitely going to recommend this video and be the video of the episode, because I think it's pretty cool. It definitely needs a lot of love, because I think it's very unique. Some people who've seen a certain film will probably understand where its inspiration comes from. But yeah, that's pretty much going to wrap up this podcast. Now, the next podcast is going to be podcast 160, and I originally planned to kind of overhaul and make some changes with podcast episode 160, and I'm going to try. So, and by changes, I don't mean that I'm going to completely change the format or upload a different time or, do different things. It's just small changes, but I was going to do them all at once. So it would be a nice point. So, but given the state of this country and me not necessarily knowing when work is going to be happening, that might have to wait a little bit at a later date. But don't worry, it's nothing crazy. It's nothing that's going to destroy the show. We're still going to have the episode discussions, the introduction, and all that kind of stuff. It's just slight changes that I feel will kind of add a little bit more to the podcast, especially given that the last few podcasts have done really well, to which that's one thing I must say. A massive thank you to everyone who did listen to the previous podcast, some of the other podcasts, and new listeners as well. I really, really appreciate the views and that, and hopefully you guys are enjoying this podcast, and hopefully you guys stick around. If you do want to stick around, I mean, I know you're probably sick and tired of any of your other favorite content producers saying this, but if you do subscribe and you do like, that really actually does help these videos, because I would love to have a small grown community of people who listen to this podcast. And I have a ton of actual content that I want to be releasing soon. Can't really do that right now because it's not exactly safe to be leaving the house, and I can't exactly meet up with my friends because I kind of need them here for some help. But I'm going to try and do something to kind of give you guys a little bit more variety. I know most of you probably just like the podcast anyway, but you know, you guys also might like some other things. I'm going to possibly try and live stream a little bit more, maybe on the weekends, just so the week the podcast doesn't go up, you guys have like a long gameplay video or something like that. But we'll see what happens. But thank you all for listening. Hopefully you enjoyed this episode. And I will end this podcast like I always do by saying I was the Angry Raccoon, and I will see you on the next podcast.